Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Edebo, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to make this beautiful gown with an asymmetric gathers. If this is something you're interested in, please keep on watching. And the basic things you'll be needing for this tutorial are your crepe fabric. I made use of 1.5 yard crepe fabric. Yours can differ depending on your size. And I also made use of 3 yards of an African print for the gathers. Yours can differ also depending on your length. And the basic measurements you'll be needing are your waistline, that's from your shoulder to where your waist stop. Your hip point, that is from your waist to the biggest part of your butt. Your full length, that is from your shoulder to the full length of your gown. Your sleeve length, that is the full length of your sleeve. Your bust circumference, that is the round of your bust. Your waist circumference, that is the round of your waist. Your hip circumference, that is the round of your hip. Your round sleeve, that is the round of your hand. So I'll be making the upper part of the dress first before the gathers. So I've already gone ahead to fold my fabric in 4 pieces, 2 pieces for front and 2 pieces for back, and I added up 1.5 inches for zipper allowance for the back of the gown. Okay, I'll be coming down a little from the tip of the fabric and draw a straight line. This will be regarded as my starting line or my shoulder line. This is where all the necessary length for my dress will actually start from. So the next thing I'll be doing is to get my shoulder length, and to get that I'll be dividing my shoulder to shoulder measurement by 2 and come in on the line by the figure I got and mark it out, and then come down from that point by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. Our shoulders are not straight, hence the shoulder slope, and then I will now connect that new point in a straight line to the shoulder line. So the next thing I'll be doing is to get my armhole depth, that is where my arm will actually pass through, and to get the right measurement I'll be dividing my bust circumference by 6, and whatever I get I will then add up 1.5 inches to it, and I'll be placing my tip on the new shoulder length, which is the shoulder slope, to the figure I got for my armhole depth, and mark it out. I will then extend that point in a straight line to the fabric this way. This will be my chest line for my gown. I will then remeasure my shoulder length on the chest line to be sure it's accurate, and then connect the 2 points in a straight line together. So the next thing I'll be doing is to get my armhole curve. I'll be remeasuring the line to get the midpoint, and when I get the midpoint I'll be coming in by 0.5 inch. All these measurements I'm taking is actually to get my armhole curve correctly. And then on the chest line I'll be coming in by my bust circumference divided by 4 and mark it out. I will then connect the shoulder slope, the 0.5 inch intake, and the point of the chest line in a curved line this way with my ruler. So this is the armhole curve for my dress. So moving on to the next measurement, I'll be placing my tip on the shoulder line to get my waist length and then mark it out. I will then extend that point across the fabric in a straight line with my ruler like this. The next length I'll be getting is my hip point. I'll be placing my tip on my waistline to my hip point and mark it out. I will then extend the point across the fabric in a straight line this way. I'll be going back to my waistline to extend it to the back of my dress because I'll be needing that for a very important measurement. Because of the asymmetric gathers for the gown, one side is actually long and the other side is short. So for the long part, I'll be coming down from my hip point by 2 inches to achieve that, and then I will also add up 0.5 inch for joining allowance at the hem of the dress, and I will then be extending that point across my fabric in a straight line. Okay, and then the next thing I'll be focusing on is the short part of the asymmetric gathers. I'll be coming down by 5 inches from my waistline and mark it out. And I will then extend that point in a straight line to my fabric. This is actually the shorter part of the asymmetric gathers. So that's practically all on the necessary length I need for my gown. So the next thing I'll be doing is to take my body circumference. But before I will do that, I will need to eliminate any zipper bulge that will actually form when I'm done making my dress. Okay, so on the waistline on the back fabric, I'll be coming in by 1 inch and mark it. That is minusing 0.5 inch from the zipper allowance I added. I will then connect the new point to the shoulder line in a straight line and also connect it to the full length of my dress in a straight line also. So on the chest line, after the zipper allowance, I'll be coming in by my bodice circumference divided by 4 and mark it out. And I will then add up 1 inch for seam allowance for my dress. And on the waistline, after the zipper allowance, I'll be coming in by my waist circumference divided by 4. And then I'll mark it out. I'll then mark 0.5 inch, that is replacing the 0.5 inch I took from the back of the zipper. I will then also add up 1 inch for seam allowance and mark it out. So instead of measuring my hip circumference at the main hip line, I'll be going over to the new point after the hip line. And on that line, I'll be coming in by my hip circumference divided by 4. And I will then add up 1 inch for seam allowance and mark it. And that's all for the body circumference. So I'll be connecting all the points on the lines together. Just watch what I'm doing, okay? Please disregard the connection I'm doing right now. Reason is because this was not the right place to impute the asymmetric gathers. But as we proceed in this video, I will show you guys the right one. Bear with me, okay? So the next thing I'll be doing is to focus on the neck, okay? The neck of my gown. My neck width is 3 inches. To get an accurate neck width, you have to divide your bust circumference by 12. And on that shoulder line, I'll be coming in by 2.5 inches instead of the 3 inches because I'm actually cutting directly on the fabric. And my back neck depth is 1.5 inches, but I'll be coming down by 1 inch also and mark it out. And my front neck depth is 4 inches, but I'll be coming down by 3.5 inches and mark it out. And I'll be connecting all the neck depth to the neck width in a curved line with my curve ruler this way. Just watch what I'm doing, okay? So that's all on the upper part of the dress. I'll just be cutting out the dress and I'll be cutting along the line. Just watch closely, okay? And follow through. I'll first of all cut the back neck and then add up 0.5 inch for the shoulder and the armhole of the dress for joining allowance. So after I'm done cutting it out, I'll be extending the shorter part of my asymmetric gathers on the other side of the fabric to get the gown right. I will then turn the fabric the other side and draw a straight line, extending the point to the other side of the fabric. And after I'm done, I'll be opening up the fabric to get the curve correctly, okay? So just watch closely how I'm doing it. I'll be connecting it this way with my curve ruler. You can actually use your hands if you don't have a curve ruler for this, okay? And then I will cut along the curve lines after I'm done. In order to extend this new curve to the back, I'll be placing the back of my dress this way, ensuring that both the front and the back are equal. And when I'm sure it is, I will then cut the back out. And that's all for the upper part of the dress. So the next thing I'll be doing is to cut the sleeve of my gown, okay? I'll be measuring the length of my armhole, and please don't forget to minus the 0.5 inch that was added for joining allowance at the shoulder. And whatever I get, I will use it to cut the sleeve. I'll be keeping this aside to focus on the sleeve. So I've already gone ahead to fold up my fabric in 4. That's for the both sleeve, okay? When folding your fabric, make sure it's very enough to accommodate the armhole length you actually measured, okay? So I'll be coming down a little bit from the tip of the fabric and then draw a straight line across. And then from that line, I'll be coming down for my sleeve cap and draw a straight line. You can achieve a sleeve cap by actually dividing your bust circumference by 10. So because my fabric is actually my armhole length, I didn't see the need to remeasure it. I will then connect the end of the new line to the starting of the first line in a diagonal line with my ruler this way, okay? I'll be remeasuring the diagonal line to get the midpoint and mark it out. And then also measure the front line before the midpoint to get the midpoint also and mark it out. And then I'll also measure the second line after the main midpoint to get the midpoint, and I'll mark it. And then on the first line before the main midpoint, I'll be coming up by 0.5 inch, and then also come down by 0.5 inch on the second line after the main midpoint. And then I will now connect the points together this way in a curved line, okay? Just watch what I'm doing, okay? And then after I'm done with that, I'll be coming down from the top of my fabric for my sleeve length, and then add up 2 inches for the hemming allowance of my sleeve and mark it out. I will then extend that point to the fabric in a straight line. Next is to cut out my fabric, and I'll be adding up 0.5 inch joining allowance at the top of my sleeve before cutting it out. And that's all on cutting of the sleeve, okay? I'll be keeping that aside to focus on the joining of the gown. So I've already brought back the front and the back of my gown, and I equally cut out a bias myself for the piping of my neck. You can decide to do this or just get a bias from the market. I couldn't get this exact color when I went to the market. That's why I made it myself. I don't want any other color. I will then place the bias directly on the right side of the fabric on the neck and pin it down. And then when I'm done with that, I will then go over to my machine to sew the both of them together with 0.5 inch joining allowance, and I will be doing the same thing to the back of my dress, okay? And this is it after I'm done sewing the bias to the fabric. I'll be notching the allowance so my neck can actually turn properly. So I will take in the bias to the wrong side this way and sew the both of them together, okay? I'll also be doing the same thing to the back. And this is it after I was done sewing them together. And I also did same to the back. So the next thing I'll be focusing on is joining the front and the back shoulders together. And to do that, I'll be placing the front of my fabric right side facing me, and then place the back on the front fabric this way, right side facing each other. And then I will join the shoulders together and sew them with 0.5 inch joining allowance. So this is it after I was done sewing the both shoulders together with 0.5 inch joining allowance. So the next thing I'll be doing is to join the both sides of the front and the back together, creating my gown. I'll be joining them together, making sure that the both sides are equal, and then I will go over to my machine to sew them together with 1 inch seam allowance I added while drafting my gown. And this is it after I was done sewing both the front and the back together with the 1 inch seam allowance. And I also went ahead to sew the zipper part of the back together with the 1.5 inches zipper allowance I added, and I make sure I leave the parts where I'll be joining my zipper to the dress. So I'll be going over to my machine to attach the zipper to the back of my dress, okay? And I'll come back to show you guys after I'm done. So this is it after I was done attaching the zipper to the dress. I'll be focusing on attaching the sleeve and sewing the sleeve. I'll be keeping the gown aside to focus on the sleeve. So these are the two sleeves, okay? I'll be opening up one of the sleeve, and I'll be folding the hem of my sleeve by the hem allowance I added. I'll be coming in 1 inch twice to eliminate the 2 inches hem allowance I added, okay? And then I will go over to my machine to sew on it. So this is it after I was done sewing the hem allowance to the sleeve, and I also went ahead to sew the both sleeve. Because the down part of the sleeve requires an elastic, I'll be cutting out 2 pieces of elastic. That's the round of my sleeve plus 1 inch for joining allowance. I'll use my safety pin to pass the elastic through the channel. And after I'm done passing it through, I'll just be going over to my machine to sew the two sides of my sleeve together with the 1 inch seam allowance I added at the beginning of the drafting of the sleeve. And this is it after I was done sewing the two sleeves together. I'll be bringing back my dress to focus on joining the sleeve to the gown. So I'll be joining the sleeve to the gown through the armhole with my machine, okay? Just like I see in the video. And I'll be doing that offline. So this is it after I was done attaching the sleeve to the gown through the armhole. And that's all for the upper part of the dress. I'll be focusing on the down part of the dress, that is making the gathers for the dress. I'll first of all be measuring the full width of one side of the dress and then multiply that into 2 to get the round measurement. And then I will now multiply this round measurement I just calculated by 3. Okay, whatever figure you get, just multiply it by 3. So that's the full width, that is the wideness of the fabric that I need to cut to be enough for the gathers. And for the length of the gathers, I'll be placing my tape directly on the shoulder of my dress to the full length of the gown, but it should be on the shorter part of the asymmetric gathers. That is the length of my gown. And then from where the shorter part of the gown stops, I'll be taking the remaining inches from this part to the end of my dress to get the full length of the material that I'll be using for the gathers. And I will then add up 1.5 inches to whatever inches I got. Okay, that will be for the hem allowance and the joining allowance at the gathers part. If you actually measure from the longer part of the dress, you will end up having a shorter dress than the actual length you wanted. So if you are measuring, make sure you measure from the shorter part, okay, and the remaining inches you will use it to cut out the gathers for the gown. And this is it after I was done cutting out the gathers for my gown. The next thing I'll be doing is to sew it on the upper part of my dress, just like you're seeing in the video. Just give it a little pleating, or you can do gathers whatever you wish, and sew the both of them together with 0.5 inch joining allowance all round the fabric. Okay, so I'll be going over to my machine to do that, and this is it after I was done sewing them together. Okay, and in order to make the length of my gown equal, we need to join the two sides of the gown, making sure that the both sides align. And after that, I will just draw a line from that shorter part to the end of the fabric and then cut it out, and I will just go over to my machine to sew the hem of the gown with the hem allowance I added by coming in 1/2 inch twice. So this is it after I was done sewing the hem. Okay, and that's all on how to sew this beautiful gown with an asymmetric gathers. I hope this is helpful, and I hope you'll be trying it out soon. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to share, subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye guys.